And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Melanie Fregoso, who completed a residency in cornea and contact lens at the University of Houston College of Optometry. After residency, she took a faculty position at the University of Iowa Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences, where she continued to develop her specialty. She's the owner of Alamo Eye Care and the director of the Contact Lens Institute of San Antonio, located in San Antonio, Texas. She's also diplomate of the Cornea Contact Lens and Refractive Technology section of the American Academy of Optometry, a fellow of the Scleral Lens Education Society, council member of the Contact Lens section of the American Optometric Association. Thank you so much, Dr. Fregoso, for being here with us today. These are financial disclosures, and they've all been mitigated.
Thank you so much, Elise. And I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. Thank you so much, Wu University, for giving me the opportunity to share my passion, my practice, and really when I started my scleral lens or my contact lens practice, I actually bought it. And it was an existing practice, a comprehensive care practice. So I had to learn how to change an already existing comprehensive care practice into a specialty contact lens practice. And I have a large support group. You know, I'm very, very thankful and grateful that I have such a great staff who support me, and everyone in my staff is incredibly important. They all have a very specific role, and really, you know, even though you are, you know, making the decisions, you know, really you need to make sure that your staff stays educated, because without your staff, you're not going to be able to move forward and provide patient care. So this is actually a fairly recent picture of my staff. So very, very, very proud of them. So what is in a scleral lens practice? So I want all of you to open your imagination. Really, in my opinion, it is practicing medical optometry to its fullest. So a little bit about myself. I actually practiced in corporate optometry for 3 years after graduation. And I found that my contact lens patients were the ones who kept on coming back to me over and over again. And so this is where I found the love for providing care, anterior segment care, and contact lenses. And so I decided to give up, you know, my full paid position as a full-time doctor and go back and do a residency. Actually, interesting, Dr. Wu was in my residency class. I was the resident at University of Houston, and then she was at St. Louis. And so I gave my time to go into deep learning, and that was something that I needed to do for myself. It's not necessary for everyone to do a residency. Just for me, that's something that I really wanted to do. You can learn all of this in practice, is that I have associates and I have trained them to do, you know, specialty contact lenses. But I after I finished my residency, I went to Iowa, as Elise said, and then I came back and I opened my own private practice, or I bought a practice actually. And so when I first, you know, went into it, you know, I thought, you know, I'm going to go ahead and provide my residency. I'm going to provide specialty contact lens care. You know, I'm just going to focus on just contact lenses. But really is that, as we know, with myopia management actually expanding, there's knowledge these patients have high refractive errors. And with high refractive errors, the eye in just general is very delicate. They tend to have lots of comorbidities, retina problems, you know, anterior segment problems. So really, you know, I thought I was going to be doing cornea and contact lenses, but my scope of practice is incredibly full. There is a concentration on anterior seg, but often the surgeons who refer to me, they have so much on their plate surgical wise is that I'm having to manage a fair amount of glaucoma, anterior uveitis. Sometimes patients call you and they think it's their contact lens, but really it's inside of their eyeball. Or even lately, I've been finding, because of the connection of, the cornea can't be separated from the tear film, and the cornea is highly innervated, is that there's a lot of comorbidities with behavioral concerns, neurological concerns. Myself, I have migraine, and when my migraine spikes, my dry eye gets worse. Is that really, I'm even becoming now, I never thought a neuro, and having a subspecialty in neuro optometry. So really, it's really a great subspecialty, but just knowing that you're going to get in deep, because these patients really need our care. So what again are the offerings of a medical contact lens practice with a focus on scleral lenses? So this is, refraction is very important. I talk to my students. I actually am thankful that they have let me onto the faculty for University Incarnate Word here in San Antonio. And my students are really interested, in posterior segment, but really, when it all comes down to it, the patient really just wants to be able to see. So refraction is incredibly important. So everything going into the refraction should be really focused on. But this is a practice that is focused primarily on contact lenses and not necessarily the optical. I have an optical, and it is not a focus in my practice. It's contact lenses. It's more of a service, but really, focusing on the optics of the contact lens, because a lot of these patients, they don't see well with glasses, or if they do wear glasses, it's more to go ahead and increase their quality of vision over their contact lenses. So the contact lens, or the medical scleral lens practice, is typified by an expertise of multiple fitting modalities, and then having lots of access to fitting sets, and then friends, consultants, colleagues to help you get through some of these atypical patients, and then custom lens offerings. So again, we're going to focus on treating anterior segment disease. And so the anterior segment, again, 20%, I want to share with you. I learned this just recently. I mean, I knew this already, but it has been reopened to me. I read an article recently by Stephen Flugfelder, one of my mentors in Houston at Baylor Alcac, and he gave a really good article review on the tear film unit. So the anterior segment of the eye cannot be separated from the tear film. The tear film offers the first 20% of the refractive error. The cornea is 60%, which is why when we go ahead and we put contact lenses over an irregular cornea, is that their vision drastically improves. And then the last 20% is actually the lens inside of the eye, the natural lens, or in this case, the implant. And so, as we know, when we place a contact lens on the eye, let's just put it on the table right now, is that we are causing dry eye disease, because it cuts that really small 3 nanometer, smaller than millimeters, 3 nanometer tear film into half, into the pre-lens tear film and the post-lens tear film. And a lot of these patients, again, they never have one thing, is that they almost always have dry eye disease starting off to become with. So you have to make sure that you are really in tune to keeping the contact lens moist, because I'm in the business of keeping patients in their contact lenses. And so therefore, by default, I have become really interested in dry eye, because I want to make sure that my contact lens is, that 20% is working well on top of the 60% that I am providing. So it's treatment beyond refraction, rehabilitation of the vision, and then protection of that surface, and a lot of times healing the surface. So corneal disease is actually rare, but comorbidities are common. And so this is something really interesting that my husband, I'm fortunate enough, he is my business manager, and he, we get and the contact lens subspecialty, there's it's growing, but we all know each other very well because we're so thankful to have things like the Scleral Lens Education Society, meetings like this provided by Wu University, where we get to all know each other at these events, subspecialty meetings. So we all think that this is very common. Actually, this is a very niche subspecialty. So just to give you an idea, these were just diseases that we Googled, and we found, what the percentage of how many people with an anterior segment corneal disease, what we're finding. So Stevens-Johnson syndrome, you can see is small, is a fair amount, and then it gets smaller to graft versus host disease here. But then when you actually take a look at posterior segment disease, so diabetes and glaucoma in comparison to and cataract in comparison to what where I like to focus on is even a smaller subset of the Google search. And then this is really funny, I guess. Kim Kardashian actually trumps all of, eye care and in general. So this is just a visual on really how niche and niche the cornea and contact lens practice is. And so becoming one and offering this to your patients is that you're going to really be a remarkable help and an asset to your community and the doctors who you serve and care for their patients. So where is contact lens doctors and cornea optometrists do we lie? And so the majority is actually in private practice. I didn't think this going in, I probably would have guessed maybe university setting, but really the majority of us are in private practice. And so really is that this is something that you can incorporate into your practice. And where do the referrals come from? A lot are self-referrals. So just getting out into the community, having, there's a lot of searches now on web pages. And so making sure that you are visible. I personally started my practice going door to door and letting doctors know that I was here, both MDs and then also optometrists. And then once they actually started referring me patients, those patients then started referring other patients because they're all part of like some sort of social media community, or I don't know whether they talk to each other like at their cornea MD specialty office, or what it is that then from there you start to get more self-referrals. I do get a fair amount of referrals from my colleagues, is that I do like to attend a lot of meetings in order to keep myself well educated. And so anybody who moves from one area to the other area, if they know I'm there, they'll refer. And then of course I'll do the same. Unfortunately, optometric subspecialties are not recognized yet. But I think as our profession grows and we get a more of a scope of practice, is that this will change. And I know that organizations such as the American Academy of Optometry are trying to change so that we have recognized subspecialties. So how do you start introducing specialty lenses into your practice when you have a typical clinic which serves comprehensive exams, spectacles, cosmetic lenses, and urgent care? So how do you build this into your already busy practice? So what are some of the questions I will try to answer for you, or what are some of the things that you need to know? how do you gain patients first? And then how do you, once you have a patient, it's like, how do you fit this into your already busy schedule? So the first thing is that you need to understand, how to serve these patients. So self-study is going to be incredibly important. You're already coming to, this meeting. So this is the first step, but just trying to delve in, there's so many resources now, optometric, journals, magazines. There's a lot of these things are really, when you read them, they're as good as peer-reviewed material from, the medical library, PubMed. So really just keeping up on the knowledge. A big one is actually consultants from your laboratories. Is that when I was first getting started, when I was practicing here in San Antonio, is that a lot of consultants would contact me and come in and help train me on their new designs, and then my staff on their new designs. And so they want to do this. And so making sure that you take advantage fully of all of these training programs, and then going to meetings as well, and talking to other people. If you mentorship is such a big one, is that I would never have been able to do it without knowing people who know more than me, and taking advantage of that, and calling them, and not being afraid to ask. So I want to argue that your specialty lens and your scleral lens patients are already there. So a mentor of mine is Clark Newman actually said during one of his webinars, the difference between an expert and a non-expert is the expert knows what they are looking at. So the patients are already there. You just have to actually recognize them. So I was in high school in the 90s. And so the Matrix, I love the first three Matrix. The fourth one came out. I'm kind of iffy about that. I think I need to watch it again, but this is, the Neo, he could see, everything for what it was. Is that when you start to actually talk and really listen to patients, because sometimes you've already made the decision on what the patient needs before they even say anything based on their chart. If you really actually listen to the patient and you do a careful slit lamp evaluation, is that they are telling you, that they need something more. A specialty contact lens could potentially help them. I was talking to my new associate, and, it's kind of like, my best analogy is, having, my daughter, is that my daughter wouldn't know what she wanted. She would just cry, and I'd have to kind of figure it out. But if I really took subtle cues, I could figure out what she needed. This is the same thing with a patient. Really listen to them, really look at their body posture, really do a careful slit lamp evaluation, and you will find that you actually have an abundant amount of patients in your practice. So I want to go ahead and share with you some of these possible patient types. Is high ametropia. So since I'm in private practice, I do take vision plans, and also both medical plans, and I use them together in order to help bring care to my patients. But high ametropia, anything above +10, -10 is considered visually necessary, or, some sort of refractive anomaly that doesn't, correct well to, 20/20 with glasses, they're degraded. But then as soon as you put the contact lens near to the cornea, is that all of a sudden they improve, 3 or 4 lines, and they are a normal cornea. So presbyopes are a big one. Is that there's so many specialty lens offerings, both, soft or all soft, hybrid, corneal, and then scleral contact lenses. pediatric patients. So with the gaining traction of providing myopia management to patients is that you are going to be screening more pediatric patients for myopia. But I want to argue too, is that when you start actually really looking, is that you will reveal, little kids who do have high refractive errors, amblyopia, even keratoconus too. And so pediatrics are a good possible patient base for scleral contact lenses. Dry eye is a huge one, is that a lot of patients need their corneal nerves protected to help break that cycle of neuropathic pain and neurotrophic keratitis. And so dry eye is a huge one in my practice. Refractive surgery, is that their eyes don't fit well in, regular geometry designs or lens that align with the cornea. Is that vaulting over the post-refractive eye is sometimes the most efficient and the best thing to do for these patients and other irregular astigmatic patients. So I want to go ahead and share with you, this is actually a patient that one of my associates missed, who came back and she was reporting blurry vision through her glasses. So this is a 35-year-old Hispanic female, history of high myopia and astigmatism before refractive surgery at age 25. And she noticed within the last 2 years, she was having some vision concerns at night. And she said the glasses that my associate gave her, just everything just don't seem clear. It's just a little bit blurry and smeary. And so, I take a look and it's 20/20 vision. But then when I actually start to refract her, I could really push her to 20/20, but really when things start to get blurry, it's like 20/40, 20/50, and then it starts to shadow and get weird. And I can see 20/20, but it's not really awesome. So this is what she's telling me. And then, so this is what her topography looks like. So when I don't have it noted here, but the keratometry values side by side, it was like the flattest area was like something like 33 diopters. And then the steepest area was like 64. So her mom, just to share with you, actually has pellucid marginal degeneration. And I do think that she has a little bit of, even though she corrects well, I do think that she does have some amount of ectasia. But when you really take a look at actually her cornea, if you looked really well, my associate missed it, is that she had some she had some flap striae. So what I think was happening through time is that she became, slowly maybe more ectatic and thin in the periphery, is there her flap before was fitting nice, and then it started to sunk in, and she got this kind of striae, which was degrading her quality of vision. And so something else to look out for is that I, used to miss. You can miss very easily, but putting just a little bit of fluorescein is basement membrane changes. Basement membrane dystrophy is a really common one that will cause, corneal irregularity. So watching out for those. So that's kind of in the same vein. And so with LASIK, patients who have had refractive surgery, a lot of them see fairly good, but some patients, they will have through time, relate glare, halos, double vision. And so really, we have all of us have a lot of these patients floating around your practice, is that they'll relate, oh, my vision is not, great at nighttime. And sometimes we're like, yeah, that's kind of, normal. But really, if you really tune into them, they're telling you is like, hey, my vision is not good at nighttime. Can you do something better? And you can actually put, a scleral contact lens on top of that surface. So a lot of patients that I got from my the previous person who owned this practice, he owned it 30 years before I did. And he had a large, like in the 90s, I guess, like people were getting refractive surgery on like trucks or something that would like park outside of the parking lot. And it was just like, a factory. So he has so many post-refractive patients. And this patient actually was one of his patients. And so putting on a scleral contact lens, I mean, there's so many of these now, and even refractive surgery is still, it's gotten better. They've gotten better at screening, but there's so many of these patients still floating around, and just putting a scleral contact lens on the eye will help actually smooth out that surface, provide them the good quality of vision. But a lot of these patients do have, dry eye, because you have to remember, when you get LASIK surgery, what happens is that we intersect those corneal nerves. So a lot of them have dry eye concerns. And so that will help with the dryness. And then it also gives you an opportunity to build your dry eye practice by trying to help the tear film, on top of the contact lens, and then get the patient comfortable. So we ended up putting a contact lens on a scleral contact lens on this eye. Because she was so oblate, in the lens that I used, I got this really crazy, wacky high minus refraction, and like she correct, fairly well-ish. But I got this weird score because it was I had mostly a prolate design on her eye, and her eye is so oblate. There was like a lot of central vault, and it didn't really look ideal. So what I did is that I decided that I was going to invest in scleral ophthalmology. What this is that it is like corneal topography, where it measures the shape of the cornea. This actually measures the shape of the sclera, and it focuses on the sclera, and it does take into considering the shape of the cornea, but it tells you actually the complete ocular sagittal profile. So I have this technology in my practice. So what I was able to do after I got this information is I created a really oblate design. And so what that means is that instead of having a regular geometry design where the base curve is actually the steepest portion of the lens, is that my base curve was actually one of the flatter portions of the lens. So we did something, and we went, looking at this here, excuse me, we went from a 48, and then we went ahead and we collapsed down. And so I was able to make a 41 base curve. And so when we go SAM and FAP, when we go ahead and go more oblate, we add plus. So I was able to take it down, and with the power down, and with that, she was able to see well. So when you are building your specialty lens practice, is that you really, I want to make the argument is that you really have to focus and be involved in wanting to provide this care. If you want to, you still have an existing practice, is that you may want to consider is that if you have somebody who can, see at some point, try some point more of your comprehensive care patients, you may want to consider that as you get busier. But it's like you really have to focus on these patients in practice. So becoming a scleral lens or a specialty lens expert is that, of course, it starts in optometry school. For students, if you guys are in, is that really just focus in when you're in contact lens clinics, making sure that you're really understanding all the basics. Residency and fellowship, are nice. Especially if you're right out of optometry school. But for those of you who want to delve in, it's just finding somebody in your area, near your area, or, reaching out to the labs near you to help, get you involved and reading, reading a lot of books. I actually have a little library here in my office where it's just, contact lens nerd books. And then there's a lot of information in there, and just even going out on the National Library for Medicine on PubMed and just Google and looking for those papers, is that you're going to learn a lot just by reading what's available. Continuing education, like the webinar series that Wu University is sponsoring right now, and other meetings around the United States. And then, considering becoming a fellow or a diplomate of some of these really specialized contact lens and cornea groups. So it's also, you want to make sure that you are, a leader within your practice, show your patients that, but then also show your community that as well. So I am a big proponent of being involved outside of the clinic. I'm very involved actually here locally is that I'm thankful and grateful enough that we have a place. It's called Eye Care San Antonio, Haven for Hope. And it's 38 optometrists and ophthalmologists, and we're all volunteer. And we provide care to low income patients here in the San Antonio area and the homeless. So, just even being part and giving back to the community is that I am a big proponent of goodwill, is that if you give, you will receive. So getting your name out, and I've just become, just through volunteering, is that I've become known as the person to refer all of your kind of complex contact lens and scleral lens patients to, and those doctors have given back, and that group has given back tremendously. So also considering is that once you have built that expertise, is giving back to your profession, is considering being a site, an FDA site for, contact lens companies that are coming into the market, new contact lens contact lens brands, who are coming into markets, and then also trying to share the information that you've learned in your clinic and your personal practice with other colleagues by maybe providing some literature, writing articles. So again, these are just some of the organizations where you can delve into that provide information, and then you can be a part of, in order to learn how to fit scleral contact lenses, and then learn about the diseases that we use to treat with scleral contact lenses. And so now I want to get a little bit into how to create a specialty scleral lens practice. And so it's the right practice at the right time. So where do you locate your specialty lens practice? Ideally, you'd want to be around, nobody. You want to be the only person, in the area. So no one knows, but San Antonio is actually the 7th largest city in the United States. And so there's a ton of providers who are around me. But really, ideally, if you could have as minimal competition as possible, but what sets you apart is becoming very involved within your profession, and making sure that you have allowed everyone to know that you are an expert within the area. So regarding specialty contact lenses, household income is not necessarily important. I am actually fortunate to be in an area where the median income is $100,000, but I get actually referrals all the way up towards Waco, Texas, which is almost 2 hours away, down to the almost Mexico. I have patients from Mexico, but 4 hours away. So once you establish yourself as an expert, is that you will get referrals from a very wide net. However, at first, most of your patients will be within, your area. So really, this is where you have to look, within becoming involved locally into the Lions Club. If there's any volunteer clinics, if you have a church that you're involved with, is that, to go ahead and talk and just make yourself present. And so you do need equipment. I would say the most important piece of equipment, besides, all the stuff that you already have for your comprehensive care patients, is I'm going to go ahead and argue a topographer, and then also a pecumeter. And the reason why I say that is that if you're accepting any insurance, especially vision plans that reimburse for visually necessary contact lenses, is that they want to see evidence that that patient does have a corneal condition, or the condition that causes that says that they are a visually necessary patient. So typically, if you're doing contact lenses, that's going to be, a corneal condition, and you have to show that that patient needs, the contact lenses if they have keratoconus. So all of these things are ideal to have. But I would say the biggest thing is topography, pecumeter to protect yourself from audit, And then also, of course, you want to have solutions, things to care for your patients, and then also, prescribing pharmaceuticals. And so having access to all of those things. And so collecting baselines are very important. So again, here's topography. So this tracks whether the patient is actually progressing or not corneal wise. Looking at, things like the maximum keratometry value, the differences between the inferior and superior region of the cornea. Taking a look at very closely the whole entire cornea. If you have access to the an endothelial, some sort of instrument that measures, endothelial cell count, that can be nice in order to avoid some surprises later on, especially if you manage a lot of corneal grafts. Taking a look, if you can, I don't have one yet, but having, something that measures posterior float. So I have a placido disc, which measures the anterior cornea, but I think a lot of times patients I'll miss, even form fruste keratoconus, which really you'll see that first on posterior float. And it even, some companies is that they are some vision plans, that they will look at, even form fruste if the patient has a high refractive error. And if you can say that they have form fruste, is that could potentially be billed as visually necessary as well. So again, corneal topography is really important. You should have one. Also, what's nice about it is that your staff can already diagnose dry eye before you go into the room, especially if you have a placido disc, because we all know that is important. With that measures the tear film coating the cornea, and then that is how it gets the curvature of the eye. Corneal tomography is really nice. This is the one that I really, really want on my this is on my wish list. So I'm hoping I get this soon. But having access to the anterior and the posterior float, and this is really nice for not only scleral lenses, but also if you're increasing your scope. I would say that this is really important even for myopia management, because sometimes, some of these patients, I live in San Antonio, these patients have a high amount of astigmatism. I worry about, I always worry about ectasia, but especially if you're going to go ahead and be manipulating the very anterior part of the cornea, is that I worry. And I think it's really nice to have, especially for the keratoconus screening portion on Schleimflugs. And so we've already talked about specular microscopy. So one thing is that why I invested into this is that when I started doing a lot of scleral contact lenses, maybe 2 or 3 years after I bought the practice, I had a couple of patients where, I got real excited. They had a corneal graft. I put a scleral lens on it. And then they came back during the next office visit, and they said, my vision gets blurry after 1 hour. And so then I take a look and they've got corneal edema. And then I talk to them for a little bit longer, and I realize that their graft is, 10 years old, 15 years old. And so taking a look to see if there's any endothelial concerns. The endothelial cell count just gives a measurement of the shape of the endothelium, not necessarily its function. It's not an exact, but if you have an endothelial cell count of 1,000 or more, you're probably safe. If the patient still needs a scleral contact lens and the surgeon doesn't want to do any kind of transplant in order to support the endothelium, then you just have to educate, is that most patients, as long as they know what they're getting into, if you educate them, then you can go ahead and fit a contact lens over the eye. So this is just good. If you start to do a lot of them, I think it's nice to have in your portfolio of equipment. So anterior segment OCT, I think this is really nice. You can see everything without an OCT, but where I really like this is actually my staff helps me fit my contact lenses. And so I do have a few, I'm really proud. Gathia now is NCLE trained. I actually paid for her to become a national contact lens examiner accredited. So she actually helps me fit contact lenses, and she's able to look at contact lenses, scleral lenses, and tell the vault. But for your neurotechnicians is that they can tell you can have them help you fit scleral contact lenses and assessing the vault with OCT. So if you have access to this is great. You also has things like measuring epithelial tissue, which can be good, when you're monitoring, any kind of epithelial disease, or even for myopia management. So again, I want to reiterate is that we get really focused on the cornea, but again, if you have a high refractive error, comorbidities are certain. One, I want to actually share with you two stories. One of them was a patient who had iatrogenic dry eye. She had irregular astigmatism. She was post LASIK. She was in her 70s. You could tell when I took a look inside of her eyes with 90 undilated. She had this long axial length. I went ahead and I fitted her for scleral contact lenses. She lives 4 hours away, and she calls me on the phone. She was like, "These really worked when you dispensed them the other day, but now my left eye, the eye that you aimed for up close, it's blurry. I can't read with it anymore. It's just blurry." That's what she says over the phone. And so my staff is just like, well, maybe it's scleral lens fogging. Let's go ahead and add some, artificial tears. Let's try, Celluvisc in the vault of the lens. And then she comes in 2 days later and she has a neovascular net with a humongous heme. And I didn't actually do, I just did a 90 undilated. I didn't actually look, and it was a soft view because she had, of course, a visually significant cataract. I'm actually now I do photos on all of my patients. I try to do, I always look every single visit. I have another patient who is also a scleral lens patient who got normal tension glaucoma all of a sudden. And she came in and she was like, "I can't see out of my left eye. I have a spot." And she had like a big, Durant's heme on her optic nerve. And then, these patients, they tend to have, multiple comorbidities, anterior uveitis, dry eye. So really, even though you are focusing on medical contact lenses, scleral contact lenses, if you are a good doctor, you will be practicing medical optometry to the fullest, and you will be an optometric physician. And also, I want to argue is that if you are providing full medical care, is that you need to bill appropriately, because this is how the insurance companies get information on how optometrists are practicing, and this allows our profession to grow. So making sure that you're providing a lot of times, I've been totally guilty of this, is just like providing medical care and then actually not charging for it, or not bothering to, really report it. Is that I think this is really important for our profession in order to be recognized, and then also getting subspecialties. So scleral profiler, this is really nice, not a big, it's not going to be on your top of your list at first, but if you can measure some of the really complex cases, or, making the lenses thinner, is that having this is really, really nice. And what this does is it measures the whole entire ocular sagittal depth, then that's what we're dealing with when we are fitting scleral contact lenses. And then, of course, making sure that you are able to actually read your contact lenses. So this is not necessary to have a radioscope, but it sure is nice, especially when you have multiple family members who wear contact lenses, and I do. And sometimes they mix things up, and you can tell whether the lens has any kind of defects or anything like that. So making sure that you have a good staff behind you. And so everyone in my practice lives and breathes contact lenses. We try to have an education, event. Every office meeting, I actually take one staff member every time I go to a meeting. I'm taking actually my contact lens technician. She orders and does inventory for my medical contact lenses, and she does insertion and removal teach. I'm going to be taking her to the American Optometric Association meeting with me in Washington, D.C. Later on this year in the summer, but making sure that they still stay well educated, because they're the ones who are supporting you, and they spend a lot more time with your patients than you will. So I'm lucky enough to have Amber. Amber actually is the one who schedules all of my specialty lens, the majority of my specialty lens patients. She's the one who does any ABNs, informed consents, any education where I'm going to be in the exam lane for a long time. She also is very forward with my doctor. She's the one actually checking on my referring doctors and people and referring, practitioners in the community and getting referrals for me. So very important as a practice builder. Once at first it was me, right? But as I got busier, I got Amber. And so this is really, as you grow, having someone who's going to help you with this is very important, in my opinion. So scheduling, the way that I have my patients scheduled is that everyone actually has the same slots. I'm fortunate enough, I live in Texas, where real estate is relatively affordable. So I have actually 3,000 square feet, 6 exam lanes that are completely built out, and then a lot of space where I have 2 waiting rooms where patients can hide. So even though patients are booked every 20 minutes, I have them actually floating around doing different things, working with different technicians and different staff members. At first, if you don't have that kind of space, is that, of course, you want to go ahead and you want to schedule appropriately, but you can, if you're able to finagle, and teach your staff to do certain things for you, you can actually, at least for me, I'm able to book every 20 minutes at this point for all of my contact lens and my comprehensive care patients. So building a demand, making sure that you're discoverable. The big thing for me personally was face-to-face. And so that really is that all of my specialists that I work with, my MD specialists, I know personally from actually Haven for Hope Eye Care San Antonio. And from there, is that they have other groups that they affiliate with. And so it was just word by mouth. And that's personally how I grew my practice. But there are other ways listed here. And so this is really, I'm not going to have enough time to go on this in depth, but you want to go ahead, and if you're in private practice, you're taking insurance, you need to protect yourself against audit. And so making sure that your charts are impeccable, making sure that you're billing to the highest level, and making sure that you are noting everything that you do, save all images, save all invoices, making sure everything is attached, and making sure that you bill like a detail-oriented 9-9 examination, but you also fulfill 9-2 obligations for coding and billing. So just making sure you have everything in check. And then once it's going to come, what's considered, I was talking to my friend Jeff Sonsino, who's actually lecturing later on during this day, and he said if you do more than one visually necessary fit a month, you're considered high volume. So if you're doing more than one, you're going to get audited. It's just about a matter of time. So anyways, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share what I've learned in my personal practice, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you'd like to see the last portion of this webinar, I'm happy to share that with you. I also think that it's online on Wu University's website. Thank you.